So, my name's Lisa and I'm Tangerine Horizons. And this morning I got to chat to a fellow pilgrim I did the Camino Frances with last year. We talk all things Camino, his experiences mostly, a little bit of mine. And yeah, I hope it's helpful for anybody who's just about to do it or people who've done it before and want to relive a little bit of it.
So I'm Diederik. I'm from the Netherlands. In 2021, last year in autumn, I left the Netherlands to walk all the way to Santiago de Compostela. Actually, a little bit further down to Fisterra, which is the actual end.
Yeah.
And I met Lisa, and she wanted to know how I'm doing 1 year after the walk.
1 year later. And you actually started a little earlier than me, didn't you? So I started on the 26th of, I think it was the 26th of October, and you started from your home a little earlier.
Yes, I believe the 26th of September. So I walked 2,500 kilometers through Belgium, through France. And then I think we started at the same point, Jean-Pierre-de-Port, in the south of France, in the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
And then it's the Camino Frances.
What was your start point then?
My starting point of Rotterdam.
Yeah. And so that initial bit before you reached Saint-Jean, what was that like?
Well, it's a big contrast to Camino Frances, because Camino Frances is really one big stretch of hiking through nice area. And in Belgium and in France, I've walked long stretches along highways, but also through forests. You're not meeting any pilgrim, because I walked through Brussels, Paris, and Bordeaux, which is not a very famous Camino, but I liked it because I wanted to visit as a pilgrim Paris, Brussels, and Bordeaux. And I used a tent as well, and I slept in the street because there are not that many hotels, commercial ones, which I also sometimes stayed in. But I also have been camping out and sleeping in the park.
What was that
very
like?
Interesting. Very interesting episode of my life.
Yeah. What was the camping in the park? So was it the park mostly, or you said the street as well? Was that in the street too?
Yeah, well, for example, I've been sleeping in the street in Paris, and the people say, "Oh, is that not dangerous?" And then I always ask people, "Have you ever touched a homeless person while he was sleeping on a sofa in the park?" And people say, "No, I would never do that." I say, "Well, you see, it's rather safe because no one is bothering you.
Okay.
They see you with a big backpack, and I'm 1 meter 90."
Yeah.
No one bothered me, but also people didn't offer help or so they just leave you as you are.
Okay. Were you surprised about that?
No, because actually I would probably do the same. People didn't recognize me as a pilgrim because in the north of France and in the south of France, the route I took is not a very common one. So yeah, people left me by myself. You have contact if you just get something to eat, and then people get curious. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
Especially if you visit churches, because you have your stamp. And I can recall that I was in a church and there was an old lady. You can just picture them out, like maybe 90 years old, walking with a stick, black clothes.
Yeah.
And in my French, I said that I walked all the way to her church from the Netherlands, and that I was on my way to Santiago de Compostela.
Okay.
Well, as a very religious person, then it's just magic. For her, it's like, oh, there's some guy walking all the way through our church in our small village, and he's on the way to Santiago de Compostela. I mean, they see you as Saint Jacques himself, as like, oh, he's the pilgrim. He does something with his life.
Yeah.
And it's all of a sudden then you realize that it's not only a hike, but it is a kind of journey you walk. If you visit these churches and you burn a candle. Last year I burned maybe 3 candles a day, and the current year, 2022, I didn't burn any candle. So yeah, it does something to you if you frequent all these churches.
Okay, so that was quite a special part for you to kind of go into
Yes,
churches
yes.
along the way.
If I think back about it, then yeah, now you ask, you realize, yes, it's more than just a walk.
Yeah. So what was your favorite church? Was it that first church that you went into?
Well, if you look at my book, I don't know how many churches I've been visiting, but I needed to, Compostelas, because, well, everywhere you go, you get your stamp.
Yeah.
Well, all churches, I mean, they're very nice. My background is that I'm a Protestant, but if you then go into the Catholic churches, especially in France and in Spain, they are just very, very nice to visit. So yeah.
Okay. And so I wonder, did you actually meet any pilgrims on that initial route? Because I imagine it would be quite quiet.
Well, in the almost 2,000 kilometers I walked until I reached the Spanish border, met one person.
Wow.
And I walked long distance, 40 kilometers a day, sometimes 25, sometimes 70 kilometers a day, which I know it's odd, but okay, I was fit at the time. So we walked together for half a day because, well, after 25 kilometers, it was that person's, well, normal hike for the day, and I continued another 15. But it was nice to do also for that person, because that person started in close to Luxembourg, and we met south of Paris. So that person also had walked for, I don't know, maybe a month, just by herself. Yeah. So we enjoyed each other's company because it's, even though I think it's nice to walk by yourself, it's also nice to once in a while have some common friend on your walk. One Camino Frances, you meet people every day, and not only one, but 10 a day. So that's a completely different experience.
Yeah, and it's quite different, isn't it, when you're on the, well, I guess it's different to summertime as well, because it can get quite busy in summertime, but it's quite different to any other walk, in a sense. If you go out for a walk in the Highlands in Scotland, for example, or it's not quite the same. When you're on this walk, it is very much like you bump into people and you kind of get chatting, and you're all on a journey, and it's not kind of like it's ending tonight or tomorrow. It's sort of a journey that you're all on. So there's a different feel, isn't there?
Yeah. So on my first stretch, if you're by yourself, it's a complete different feeling. So I guess that, well, most people, they just walk the Camino Frances or any other Camino in Spain or in Portugal. So there's only a few group of people every year who start from home. And I think that all people who do that, as what I did, they would really see the big difference. And then they also, you enjoy that. I mean, I was ready to meet people along the way.
Yeah.
And as how I did it, because I walked 40 kilometers a day, you meet many people. You have people like yourself, they meet each other, and then they walk for a couple of 100 kilometers together. But well, basically, every day I kind of met different groups. And then maybe you started the following morning, because, well, everyone starts around the same time. That's a completely different experience, a nice experience.
Yeah. So would you say that's the main difference between a regular hike and the pilgrimage? Or a pilgrimage, I guess, in a sense, because that's that classic question. What is the difference between a long distance hike and a pilgrimage?
Well, I think it's to me, for everyone it's different, but to me, I mean, Spain, the north of Spain, the variety in the landscape, it is as if it's a hike, because it looks wonderful. I was there in October. You get an autumn with all different colors.
Yeah.
But what it makes special is that you stay in these small hostels, and it's then more traveling around the world. I've been traveling around the world. You maybe have like a $25 or euro per day budget, and then you end up in Spain in some hostel, which is only €8.
Yeah.
And then you meet people from all around the world, and then you're hungry, and then people invite you, oh, let's go somewhere. Or I said, oh, I'm hungry, why don't we go together or as a group to have some dinner? I think that's special. But if you're in the Highlands, then you're in your tent by yourself, cooking, and maybe with some other people in that tent also cooking. So this is more the traveling around the world, as if you walk with your Lonely Planet kind of type of thing, which is wonderful. Enjoyable.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? The bumping into other people. I say bumping into, but like just kind of crossing paths with people from all over the world with different stories. It's really nice. But what springs to mind when you said that was there is these mountain huts called bothies in Scotland where sometimes you could go in and there's nobody in there, but other times you can go in and there are, and you can sometimes have some really nice spontaneous interactions with people. So there's that kind of similar feel, but there's nothing quite like the kind of continuous, every night almost you do meet different people on the walk. Sometimes if you're going the same pace as certain people, you might kind of see them more frequently. And I know that happened for you towards the end of the walk. You and two others, were kind of on the same pace, quite a long distance. You're walking long distances every day. How was that? Because you were walking a lot on your own at the start, then meeting people, and then you were with kind of some of the same people towards the end.
Yeah. So in that sense, if you look at from that angle, stretches by myself, stretches on the Camino, just meeting every day other people, and then kind of towards the end, from halfway, with another person, Tiago from Brazil. And then later on with a nice guy from South Korea. And you become a kind of family. So first maybe you split the bill, and then after some time you pay for lunch. The other person pays the following day for lunch. You're in the supermarket. Then number 3 pays for it. And of course you look a little bit if it's balancing. But most people they like that because it's it's a kind of family gathering, just by being on the road. I mean, if I would look outside and go to the supermarket in town, well, no way this is going to happen. So it is kind of special. Everyone is on this journey to find something on the Camino, and for myself, I found that as well. Then in the third section with my 2 friends, walking every day around 40 kilometers, and again as a group meeting other people. So it's a kind of.
Do you think you would do it again, or would you do a different Camino, or how do you feel about that kind of sense of there are people who go back a few times? I guess.
First of all, yes, I completely understand why people either walk the same Camino a couple of times, because you meet people who walk, I don't know, I think I've met a person the 7th time that he did Camino Frances. But there are many Caminos, and I can understand why people long to such a thing. It's a kind of addicting. The scenery is nice, the people are nice, it's not too expensive for a holiday. But for myself, I rather would, let's say, walk from Dartmoor all the way up north, Scotland, or I would start in Salisbury to Rome, or maybe even all the way to China, or to you have in the US you have this big trails. That would be my type of thing, that I say, okay, let's hit the road for another 2, 3, 4,000 kilometers. But I know it's not for everyone. So I can understand why people do this a couple of times in Spain, because it's very easy to do. You cannot get lost. There is always a hotel. There is always food. There is always company. And if you choose to be by yourself, you're just by yourself and enjoy yourself and the scenery. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very safe, isn't it? I mean, the whole route is kind of the economy is built around the route, so it's quite.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I mean, if people would ask me, "Oh, is it dangerous?" No way. It's not dangerous. Can you get lost? No way. You cannot get lost. Do you get hungry? Well, you probably gain weight because there is always food
Yeah.
available. Um, no, it's if people doubt if they can do it, then it's maybe something on the physical side. But
Mm,
even that, everyone walks his own pace.
yeah.
You can walk 10 kilometers a day because there is always some hotel, hostel, every 10 kilometers.
Mm,
Maybe someday, maybe 15 or 16 kilometers.
yeah.
And people like myself, if you walk 40 to 50, it's also possible. So, yeah, if this is a kind of selling the Camino, I think everyone can do it.
It's a big selling point. You know, I did the Portuguese Camino over the summer and it was so much more expensive and it was quite a different route. You know, there was a mix of pilgrims and tourists and at times very difficult to find reasonably priced accommodation. I think the most expensive night was €75. And that
Wow.
was by no means the cheapest. You know, for a lot of people I met along the way, they spent more per night. So it's certainly different when you're spending 8 a night and you know the food and the accommodation is very good for the most part on the Frances, and you always feel like you can stop even if you want to stop earlier or you want to go on and you don't have to book, whereas on the Portuguese it did feel more like you need to be booking in places because there's a lot of tourists in some areas. So yeah, I think it's unique and special in that way. You know, there's always a room, there's always a bed, even if
Yeah,
it's on the floor.
I would expect so. I mean, I met you in autumn,
Mm,
but okay, in autumn there are not as many pilgrims as in summer, but also hostels were closed because there was not enough business for them.
yeah.
So I guess in summer, well, all the hotels are open, so I don't have the experience, but I guess, yeah, there's always something available. And if people find it tricky, then you have all these apps with phone numbers and all these owners of these hostels. They speak English, French, Portuguese,
Mm.
German. So they can tell you if they have a reservation, if they take a reservation for your bed.
Yeah.
But in the autumn, there is no need for such a thing.
No, not at all. And I guess for us as well, we were at the back end of the pandemic, you know, it was starting to,
Yes.
we're just about opening up. It wasn't quite back to normal. There was no booking. Apparently, there was no pilgrims over summer. You know, so it was that kind of time, wasn't it, where we were probably some of the first pilgrims to start walking again.
Yes.
So yeah, it was all timing there, and it was lovely. I actually liked it being that quiet because it was a lot busier, particularly on the last 100 kilometers going into Santiago on the other route. And it's really not as nice when there are crowds of people around you. And I know that everyone has their own pilgrimage, and you know you shouldn't judge, but it does feel quite intense when you're surrounded by crowds of people, and it doesn't feel quite as special. But yeah, I loved doing the autumn Camino. I mean, would you do a Camino in summer, do you think, or what are your
Well,
thoughts?
if I would do it, I would do it in another season. So I can, in a way, I can understand that people think, well, I want to do in all seasons. I want to walk one time. I
Yeah,
guess in winter it looks completely different. I think in spring it looks completely different. If you walk along other vineyards,
yeah.
I guess in spring it looks different than in autumn.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I guess if people would ask which season is the best, I think every season is the best. It's just whatever suits you. If you have summer holidays, go in summer. If you think you want to go in winter, just go in winter because there is service. You can walk. So every season has its own advantages and its disadvantages. So if people are really planning, like, oh, should I go from March 15 or something like this? Who cares? If you have time, go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's what suits your body as well, isn't it? Because some people really struggle with the heat, other people struggle with rain and the cold. So it's sort of It's kind of thinking about what suits you. I know that I struggled a lot more in summer. I was not able to walk as much. Whereas in winter you could walk long days and you'd be completely fine. But it's again, it's what you're used to, isn't it?
Yeah, but in winter, then it gets only light at 9. It's getting dark at 4.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So every season has its pros and its cons. If you would like to walk the Camino, just start from home. Take your time in your own speed. It's not a race. I walk a lot, but that's really not necessary. Some people do it for sport, maybe a little bit like me. Other people do it for the religion or for spirituality. Just pick a reason and just go for it.
Buen Camino.
Buen Camino.
What was the most memorable thing from the Camino? The most memorable thing that happened, or person you met, perhaps? Anything springing to mind?
There are in the 60 days. There are many days are boring,
Mm.
but there are days which are kind of special. I remember that I was in France. It was somewhere between Paris and Bordeaux.
Yeah.
I had a little bit to drink left, so I passed a small village. So there was someone who worked in the front garden. I said, "Oh, can you just fill up my bottle?"
Mm.
And then before you know, you're sitting on the kitchen table. The person is preparing you lunch.
Yeah.
You get all the remaining fruits which are in the fruit bowl. They even ask you, "Oh, do you need a ride?" No,
Mm.
thank you, no ride. But
Okay.
yes, thank you for the food and for the hospitality.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit proud of myself because I've never been kind of begging for food and for drinks. So I was kind of proud that somehow, even though I'm not a very quiet person, but yeah, well, to ask for something to drink, that for me that doesn't come natural. But at that point, yeah, it was a really nice experience. And then a couple of days later, I was passing by someone who worked in the garden as well, and I knew there would be down the road a little lake. So I asked the person, "Oh, do you think I can put up my tent close to the lake?" And the
Yeah.
person said, "Well, you can also put up your tent in our garden. It's a big garden." So, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, I guess she talked to her husband and she said, "Well, actually, we have a kind of a pool and we have a pool house. If you want, you can sleep in the pool house." So I come in the pool house, looked very nice. And then it comes to, well, you probably have not eaten. So why don't you join with dinner?
Mm.
So just by a question of, do you think I can put up my tent down the road? You end up sleeping in a pool house on my own mattress. But well, provided with food and with drinks. Yeah, so that's kind of, yeah, those
Yeah.
are remarkable moments that you do find people along the way who help you out in such a way. But on the Camino in Francis, there is not such a thing because, well, there is enough accommodation. But if you end up, in France or maybe somewhere else in Spain, not on the Camino, yeah, you will find all these kind people.
Yeah, we had one situation where we didn't have anywhere to stay and everything was closed. And the town was actually a little bit like there was nothing happening. And we managed to get in touch with the town mayor, and he allowed us to stay in the town hall. So that was
Wow.
quite cool. And there was well, the difficult thing was there was a pub open, but they weren't serving food. So we had olives for dinner that night.
Yeah, so you see that, yeah, I mean, there are so many good people. I guess I'm from the Netherlands. I think you will not find it here, but
Mm.
I'm sure if as a foreigner you're on the road, people will be just as nice. I guess you will find such a thing all around the world.
Yeah.
Good people who are willing to help you out.
Yeah.
In that sense, yeah, there are more good people than bad people.
Definitely, definitely. Is there an app you would recommend to people that are just starting their Camino next week or soon?
Well, I use the app Komoot, and I downloaded my whole route.
Okay.
Did I use it much? Well, not much, because in France, I knew that I wanted to walk south. I guess also a true pilgrim 500 years ago, he had no app. So I tried to walk on the sun and a little bit on the compass. And yes, of course, if I ended up downtown and I got lost, I used my app. And I also had the whole route in Camino Frances. But there is also no need for it, because on each intersection you will find a mark which shows you the right direction.
Absolutely.
So for the route, so I used Komoot. And I know there are many apps also with all the accommodations, with phone numbers, how many beds, what the costs are. So those are easily to find.
Yeah. And I guess this is a bit of a controversial question, but what was the worst thing about the Camino, or the thing you didn't really like?
Ooh. I cannot, no, there is not such a, for me, there is not such a worst thing. I mean, yeah, you can, even if you walk long distance, you get the blisters, but
Yeah.
well, that's just a fact of life. You get hungry, but that's also just a fact of life. No, I cannot think of anything. I'm not being robbed.
Yeah.
I was well equipped, so if there was no place to stay, I put up my tent somewhere, or I
Yeah.
slept on a bench in the park with my sleeping bag, which of course you don't need a tent on the Camino Frances. No, that actually all the people I talk to, no one is talking about bad experiences. Well, if you're hungry and if you have a blister, if you find that a bad experience, then, well,
Yeah.
maybe in the beginning you would think that, but after some days, then it's just a part of your trip.
Yeah.
It comes with things which always can be resolved.
I think if you can accept that and you're quite resourceful, then I think you will have no problems on the walk. I think I met a few people who dropped out who their feet were sore, or they might have gotten an injury. I met a couple where the girl was loving the Camino and wanted to go on to Finisterre and down to Porto. And they had been walking for quite a long time as well. I think it was 2,000 kilometers. So the guy in the relationship was just, he didn't like it at all. And he was very open about it, and it was quite funny. There was such a contrast between them, but they just sort of accepted it. But yeah, she wanted to continue on, but he said, no, that's enough. For Christmas, I want to be sitting on a beach somewhere. Which is fair enough. Everybody.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I would recommend that people buy shoes one size bigger than normal, maybe even 1.5 size. I wear 2 pairs of socks, merino wool and bamboo directly on my feet, which are very thin. Even though I'm an experienced walker, I use every day kind of sheep wool, so which is kind of a third layer. I'm sensitive on the front foot, so I can easily get blisters, and other people get them maybe on their heel. So it's you wrap it there where you need it. And yeah, I would recommend people just to walk around their own town a couple of days, maybe 10, 15, 20 kilometers, and maybe not on the first day. So yeah, I guess you get fit while being on the Camino, but I would recommend to start fit, and you do not need to be kind of military fit, but yeah, I mean you need to be able to walk with, I don't know, 8 kilos for 10 to 15, 20 kilometers a day. And do that a couple of days, and if you can do it, then you're ready to go to do the Camino.
Yeah. No, that's a great tip. That's the first time I heard about the sheep's wool, though. So where do you get that?
Oh, but I guess where you're from Ireland. There are a lot of donor sheep willing to donate you some wool.
So I just go to the farmer and
Um,
ask for some wool, or
yeah, you you jump over the fence and you just get it. Uh, well, in the outdoor stores, they
okay.
have it. I think yeah, I mean, every good outdoor store, they will just have sheep wool, which you can put under your feet.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just, well, it comes in 100 to 300 grams, which is expensive, maybe easily €20 a pack.
Hmm.
But it's just a sheep wool. So there is no need to get such a thing. If you know someone with a sheep, get it, and then you just manipulate it a little bit,
Okay.
and you just put it on the delicate parts of your feet,
Yeah.
and well, there you go. It also
Hmm.
has some material in it. I don't know, some oil, which
Yeah.
apparently is good for your feet. So yeah. So
Fantastic.
even experienced walkers use it. So do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. So, I guess the final question I have for you is, slipped my mind completely. Would you have any questions for me, I guess?
A question for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Since my mind
yeah.
has stopped working, you can.
Yes. Well, even though we walked the same Camino,
Mm.
um, you did it in an well, much is the same, but you walked in a group. You met people, and you kind of
Yeah.
became a family.
Mm.
Uh, so how is that? So why would a person do it? And yeah, what is nice about it, or what is the pros and the cons of walking in a kind of Camino family?
It's the camaraderie, I guess. We weren't always together. We were we'd meet up at night sometimes, or sometimes we'd walk together. But it's that sort of sense of, we're all on the same journey. And it was getting to know them, and sort of getting to know about their own stories and the things that happened along the way. Some people fell for each other, and there was some quite nice stories kind of happening along the way. So we were kind of living our own story along the way as well, not just kind of thinking about our lives before we started it. So I guess it was yeah, it was just part of the experience, I guess. And I think I would like to do more of a solo one, perhaps in spring next year, maybe the Del Norte or something like that. But then again, you kind of have to be open to what happens along the way, and I think that's part of it as well.
Yes. Yeah, so you see, there are many ways of doing it. People go as a couple, people go as friends,
Hmm.
people go as a team, people
Yeah.
team up, as what you did then on sections.
Yeah.
I walked most of it by myself, but I teamed up towards the end. Yeah, so I guess everyone can find something that suits them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing, part of it was, there was that shared experience, plus everything that was going on with COVID, because, as you know, a few of us had got COVID along the Camino, and people were supporting each other. And, if some people were in isolation, they were passing by, they would get some groceries or something to help them along the way. And, there was a sense of we were kind of in it together, I guess. We were there for each other. We weren't alone um, in that. If you became quite ill, there was that support there. I didn't get very ill, but one of my friends did get quite ill. Didn't end up in hospital, but still was quite
Yes,
ill. And I think it was one of those things where he really helped, he really felt that he was lucky to have us in a sense, rather than being completely alone in this city that he ended up in Spain, and in an apartment, on his own, basically isolating. It was quite a challenging situation to be in.
yes. Yeah, then it's good to have an Camino family. But actually, talking about illness, you do pass not only churches, but also these ancient hospitals, which were set up for pilgrims. And some of them even are hospitals today. So I guess it's just a part of the Camino that, yeah, you might fall ill and then, yeah, you depend on others. But I do have another question though, for you. So what do you think is the ideal mileage per day?
I think this depends on the individual as well and the individual's body and everything. But I think for me, probably 28 was good. You know, that was just enough, not too much. When I went over that, which I did quite a few times, I did 40 on one day. I did much less as well, probably 19, 20. But I found 28 to be the perfect balance, you know, to also enjoy where you were and to kind of, yeah, just feeling good as well. You know, day to day, it was easier to kind of maintain that distance for me at least. What about you? I know that you loved the long, very long days.
Well, it's people sometimes ask, so you walk fast, but no, it's not fast. It's just 10 to 11 hours of movement, including stops.
Yeah.
And maybe, well, it depends a little bit. You know, there are stretches, even though all are interesting, but some are more interesting than others.
Yeah.
I would not like to end up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in certain places. And
No.
then if you just move on and then you find something else, which is interesting. Yeah, people do love writing in a diary, which I didn't. You have people who have a book to read, which I'm not so much of a reader. But okay, it confirms that it suits. There is always a way for everyone to walk the Camino. You know, 10 kilometers a day to 40. You know, everything in between. It's possible. Yeah.
For me as well, you know, I did write and edit videos in the evening as well as going for dinner and everything. So, like, it was a full evening. You know, it wasn't a sense of like relaxing and chilling out. It was always full on every evening, you know, in terms
I
of.
guess you were way more busier than I was, because when my day was finished, it was just to look around if people were willing to join to go to a restaurant or to have a drink. And then the following day, up there you go. But you had your batteries, your equipment, to indeed to have all this movie. What is it? Fabrication, or you know, to and the uploading. Look for the Wi-Fi spot.
Yeah. It was great though, because it helped you to reflect on the day, and you're like, wow, I can't believe that happened, even though it was only a few hours ago, you know. So it was nice because you forget so much as well, you know, as you're walking, because so much happens.
Yes, in that way, I envy you because you have a kind of a diary of the Camino, and for me, it's kind of, well, you know, it's a year ago. Yeah, I mean, I can look back to pictures which I took or small films, just like clips which I sent home if there was something nice to share with my family at home. But for you, the way how you do it, it's forever, you know. So it's it's just a diary.
Yeah, I feel quite fortunate because it was the first time I'd done it as well. So it was quite a new experience, but also it was something I really valued, and I'm glad I did it. Which brings me back to the last question. I actually remembered it now.
Okay.
It's a year on. I wondered, you know, for you, do you feel the Camino changed you in any way? And do you feel, you know, because sometimes it causes people to self-reflect and go, okay, I need to change a part of my life, or I value a part of my life. Was there any of that, you know, a year on? What do you think?
No, I think I'm the exception. I had not really any other purpose than just a kind of challenge.
Yeah.
And I like to hike, and I wanted to do this for just a challenge. So I'm one of these people who didn't change much. Of course, there's always something there, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I met people who had no relationship, or they lost their job, or they overcame a illness, and it was a challenge for them to do this.
Yeah.
So there are many people along the way who have all kind of motivations, and my motivation was more kind of a challenge.
Yeah, like a physical.
Am I able to walk 2,500 kilometers in 60 days, even though I didn't wanted to do it as a race, because I've not been racing.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it, and I did spend time at spots where I wanted to spend time. No, it has not, for me, it has not been a life-changing event. Yeah. For you, what did it bring you?
What did it bring me?
Why did you need it 2 Caminos in 1 year?
Honestly, I just love walking. So, getting back to the Camino, it's something you can do that's a little bit, well, in the end, the Camino Portuguese isn't quite the same, actually. It's really nice and lovely and beautiful. It's actually often more beautiful in some ways than the Francaise, but it's not an easy route in the sense of, it's not easy to get accommodation so easily. The food can be beautiful but expensive, so it's so for me, just going back was a sense of I wanted to kind of walk every day, and I wanted something where I didn't have to plan out a massive trip because I had limited time to plan it. So because I had some ideas around going to Sweden and other places across Europe and beyond, but actually with the time I had, that's kind of why I did that again. Or not again, but did another route on those ancient routes.
But I don't hear any personal motive.
Not over the summer. I wouldn't say there was a personal motive as such. I mean, I did it with one of my best friends from university, so that was lovely. It was really enjoyable to be with her and to spend time with her and just walking every day and talking. It was lovely. In terms of my first Camino, it was something I had wanted to do for years. There was always people who mentioned it. I did a Spanish class years ago, and there was a girl on there who did a few days of the Camino, and she was always saying that she wanted to go back. And in fact, I sent her a message when I finished in Santiago, and I said, I've done it. And she was like, oh, I'm so happy you got to do it. And she still wants to do it. So it's one of those things that, you just hear it along the way of life. You hear about the Camino, even if it's kind of background noise in a sense. And in the end, you think, okay, well, what do I want to do? I want to do the Camino. So it was one of those things. It wasn't like a goal in a sense, but it was always in the background.
No, I think it are many things, and for one person more on one particular part, and on others on something else. So yeah, it's I know it's not for nothing. Everyone walks his own Camino.
Yeah.
And there's not a good or a bad way or a particular way. No, so I guess it's good for everyone, either for the challenge, either for overcoming, celebrating illness, or overcoming that a person lost someone, or either lost a relationship, or well, I think it's in a way it's healing.
Yeah.
But there is no need that something is broken.
No.
Before you can go into healing. It can also be make something stronger. Something which was already there can make. So
Yeah.
It's not that it is only for heart bleeding people. It's for everyone.
Exactly.
And everyone takes something out of it. For me, the confirmation that that I won my own challenge. And for someone else, it's to win, to overcome a disease. Because I've met a couple of people who were quite ill, and then at some point they were strong enough to make an attempt. And I've met people down the line, just either in Santiago or in Fisterra. They said, I'm so happy that I did it, and it's a confirmation of that I've overcome my illness.
Yeah.
Or overcome this whatever abusive relationship, or I don't know what, that.
Yeah.
So it's empowering people.
Yeah, even I met a man who'd lost his wife to a drunk driver.
Yeah.
in a car crash, and he wanted to walk the way to talk to people about it, not to preach, but he wanted to kind of, I guess, explore the grief, walk by himself, but also like tell people about drink driving and the dangers of it in a sense as well. So that was interesting. But I think the overarching theme that I noticed was most people were, the pandemic was traumatic in a way, and I guess we're still in it in a sense, but it's like at that time, I think it's a trauma for a lot of people to be separated from family and not be able to see family for years, or whatever it might be. And, I think that was the common theme that I noticed amongst people, that they were so happy to be out walking again and to be with other people in a different way. And in that way where, when you're traveling, and you've done a lot of traveling, I've done a lot of traveling, and you get to talk to lots of people from all over the world, that kind of sense of energy, the energy that comes with the Camino. And I think a lot of people felt grateful for that. I was certainly one of them. And I think that was probably the main thing I took away.
Okay. And there's one thing, there are so many people, they are filming the Camino. I think I appear in like 5 or 6 videos which are online. So I just wonder. So even though I envy them, because it's a kind of, well, it's a very graphic diary.
Yeah.
And you do see the scenery and the people you meet. But why? Even I've met TV crews kind of along the way. So what is it that people kind of feel like? Yeah.
What do people feel like?
Make a movie, make a documentary type of thing.
Well, I only met one other person actually who was doing that, and I think it was the same people that we bumped into, because she was quite excited.
Italians.
Yeah, and
yeah.
they were doing a documentary based on music along the way.
Yes.
So their purpose was more that. For me, it was more kind of documenting my personal journey and meeting other people, the connection that happens through the walk, what it was like, capturing the scenery. And actually, I do feel that was something that was quite grounding, to come back to each evening and reflect on what had happened in the day, and just kind of, maybe that's why for me the sense of time, a day felt like a week there, because yes. I was more present. I was very present day to day. I was looking and kind of, looking at the world in a very specific way, because I was also filming it and, trying to see, oh, wow, the vineyards look beautiful right now. That'd be nice to capture that, So, and although I wasn't filming all day, very, very much small moments throughout the day, but it was that sense of, it does bring you into a sense of mindfulness and kind of being present. So I guess that's why it possibly felt longer, which was a good thing for me. I was happy to slow down and really be present.
I think that's a good thing. Years ago, in my younger years, when I traveled around, I had a camera.
Yeah.
And at some point, I looked through the camera to the world. And then I thought, well, 600 pictures. Well, I've been there, but was I there? So somehow I have been moving away. But what you say, I mean, I understand too, that it is kind of pushing you to look different at your surroundings. Yeah. But to me, if I would do that, then somehow I'm more into the techniques rather than being there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me as well, because it was a new skill, I was learning the skill as well. So it was sort of, it was sort of a combination of things that did cause me to become more present. But I can see what you mean, because I think sometimes, like with social media, for example, somebody could be like taking a picture of something and they're just doing it for Instagram, or, they're just doing it because they think people will like it. And I think that's quite different to being with the moment and seeing what comes out of that, what unfolds from the moment. Because, there was some quite funny moments, Just springing to mind is when you took the camera off me and you were filming and you were narrating and all of that sort of stuff. You know, it's things that you can't plan for.
No, that's the unexpected. Well, you can expect the unexpected,
Yeah,
which is fun.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's well, you know, everyday's life is just the same thing. But on the Camino, every day is different.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's fun. And I think that about just any holiday. I guess that's why people go on holidays to
yeah.
have a break from routine.
Something novel, isn't it? So anything else that you would like to recommend to someone who's perhaps doing the Camino, or anything else that you want to share about your experience of it?
Well, you know, if people listen to me, they said, "Oh, long distance walking,
Mm.
tent, sleeping bag, mattress, rain, hunger, thirst." You know, but it's not like this. You can look for it, and I looked for it.
Mm.
But you know, if you're just a next door neighbor, so to say,
Mm.
a little bit fit, with good shoes, with the recommendation I already did for your blisters, your
Mm.
backpack is not too heavy. You don't need to spend a lot of money, but some cash at hand, you know, yeah, you know, with 2000, I guess you can have a very nice holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would just say to everyone who think about doing it, but is holding back because they are afraid of what's going to happen, or about the weather, or about danger, or dogs. It's
Mm.
not. It's not like this.
No.
It's not challenging in any way about the physics. You have some hills. Well,
Mm.
you walk slower. You take sticks, and you will come over the hill.
Yeah.
Um, you know, if you're thirsty, then you know I'm coming from a background where we say, you know, what is 3 minutes without breath, breathing,
Yeah.
uh, 3 days without water,
Mm.
30 days without food. You
Mm.
know, and there is something in between 3 hours of shelter. You know, if it's like freezing, or if you're in the Sahara. You know, so
Mm.
30 days without food and 3 days without drink. Um, so if you're thirsty for half an hour, you know, yeah, that's the Camino too. That's the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
I guess in the 1500 something, yeah, they were thirsty, they were hungry, there were wolves, there were
Mm.
people who are stealing from you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was a challenge, but today it's safe for everyone, and everyone can do it. That's
Absolutely.
my message.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Well, you're welcome. It's nice talking to you, and well, maybe there will be every year a catch up.
Yeah, follow on. So 2 years later, has it made a difference?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.